Hey VC, this is Joe. This video is going to be somewhat about disorganization and different ways I've approached collecting records over the years. I remember uh, in my youth, there were just very specific things I was interested in finding, so I'm sure I ignored all kinds of amazing stuff in the used bins and at record shows just because I didn't know any better. I came from suburbia, as I might have mentioned before, and the thing about suburbia, at least in my day before the internet, is it meant that you had a sort of a narrow world. I hadn't experienced like ethnic foods, except for the very Americanized sort of lousy versions of them. And same thing with music. I got what I got on the radio, and it was mind blowing to me when I found alternative music radio. Uh, it's ridiculous all the different names there are for different kinds of musics as people either try to describe musics or have shorthand for being able to find music they're interested in. But anyway, in my, I've talked with like Dr. Deadwax, and he's just 1 year older than me, but he got into music at a younger age than I did, so we're sort of from different generations musically, even though our chronological age is very similar. So, like what he got into as new wave, or forget what else it might have been called. By the time I got into it, seems like post-punk is a term that came up even a little later. I don't know. The term that it was used in my time in the mid '80s when I got into this kind of music was alternative music, which I don't know. I guess is a little bit pretentious, maybe. I don't know. But anyway, I want to make this a sort of a shortish video and do a couple of videos today if I can. Uh, anyway, so I think almost to make up for uh, being so narrow in my collecting habits when I was younger, I would find out about a band and I would just be looking for just that band. Um, um, Another thing that's always frustrated me about music is, especially with imports and the cost of records that are out of print and things like that, um, is our collecting often is driven by what we can find, not what we're most into necessarily. Although, it can go to one extreme or the other. But often what records I'm listening to in the past have been decided by what has come in used, and you just sort of sit and wait, especially if you're on a fixed budget. I remember when I was really into CDs, I didn't really look at the new CDs that much unless there was some specific release that I really couldn't wait to hear. I would always just go through the used releases, and I would be waiting for stuff that I was really into to come in used. So it's sort of frustrating. Obviously, sometimes I wonder why I didn't plan on having a better job so that I wouldn't have to worry about those kinds of decisions so much. Anyway, I'm not showing records, so a lot of people won't have any interest in this video. But anyway, one thing I was going to say is sort of to make up for the narrow way I was listening to music in my youth, I've sort of gone 100,000% the other direction. And I also am like sort of carpet bombing my interest in music by, although this is probably a bad way to do it, sometimes I'll buy collections from people, and of course then most people aren't into really obscure stuff. That would be really neat to find some really incredibly well, what's that word, curated collection of obscure and really interesting stuff. That's not what most people have. Most people have, the popular stuff of the generation of a 10-year period when they were young and they bought records. And so you end up with a lot of the same records. And part of me is curious, and part of me wants to give things a chance. So I end up with just stacks and stacks of records that I'm not really that interested in, but I want to give a chance to, and then I don't have time to listen to the records that I want to listen to because I'm trying to give a chance to various things like Billy Joel. I never had a Billy Joel record before. I remember growing up with, Billy Joel playing on the radio and like certain songs, just because they were fun on MTV or on the radio. I remember the song Pressure by Billy Joel as a kid. I think that was just a really fun song. Anyway, so now I have all these sort of what would seem to be on first impression to be mediocre records that I'm wading through, and they're bogging me down and taking up a lot of space. So I need to come up with some plan on how to deal with this. What I need to do is put them on the turntable quickly, go through them. I've been looking at like All Music Guide and the Rate Your Music site and seeing how different albums are rated and thinking maybe if albums are rated below a certain point, I can just ignore them and skip on to the next one. And I know with certain things, like I'm really not into country music almost at all. I like the really, really old country because it just has an authenticity that I don't personally find in modern country music. It's become its own modern thing. I don't know. Anyway, I ramble. That's what I do. You're going to have to unsubscribe if you don't like rambling. Anyway, so that's where I am today. Piles of records around me. I'm working on it, and I need to do something.